Why should you be believed instead of more than 20 women?
I can't speak on what people...
And it looked like a funeral. It didn't look like anything of like, we're introducing
one of the worst transactions I've ever seen in the NFL.
The Cleveland Browns have declared who they are.
Are you saying that those 24 women, they're all lying?
Hidden from most of the media attention surrounding the Deshaun Watson case is a legal response filed by Watson's legal team that has slipped under the radar. The 7-page response contained the findings of the firm's own investigation after they learned the identity of Watson's accusers, claiming that the plaintiff's stories and attitudes changed as soon as they saw an opportunity for a money grab. For example, one plaintiff detailed how uncomfortable she felt working with Watson, yet, after her alleged horrifying experience, she willingly invited him to her house. Another plaintiff stated that she could not move past her horrifying experience with Watson, and was adamant that she would not work for him ever again. However, she contacted Watson multiple times asking to go on a date with him. A number of plaintiffs also reportedly wanted to get money out of Watson, including one plaintiff who demanded $30,000 from Watson before filing her lawsuit in exchange for indefinite silence. She also admitted her encounters with Watson were consensual, which is called extortion. Most troublingly, plaintiff Ashley Solis demanded $100,000 in hush money on February 9, 2021. Yet, in a press conference held by Tony Busby, the lawyer representing Watson's accusers, this is what she had to say.
People say that I'm doing this just for money. That is false. I come forward now so that Deshaun Watson does not assault another woman. This is about having my voice heard. This is about having other survivors' voices heard.
A blatant contradiction, Solis would have completely deserted the voices of other alleged survivors if she had received $100,000. Contrastingly, 18 female massage therapists who collectively worked with Watson over 130 times across 5 years provided unsolicited statements in support of Watson. The 18 testimonials were remarkably similar, describing Watson as very professional, respectful, and polite, who often listened to music and was relatively quiet. There's also the question of why, despite 22 lawsuits being filed in a span of just under a month, none of the 22 women reported a single complaint to police, even though the alleged incidents took place over a year earlier. And while it is true that sexual assault survivors sometimes decide against speaking out right away for fear of intense public scrutiny and humiliation, the rapid-fire speed in which these lawsuits were filed is suspicious and inadvertently suggests the possibility of a premeditated attack against Watson. 2 months before Busby filed 22 lawsuits against him, Watson requested a trade from the Houston Texans after having grown extremely frustrated with the organization. During Watson's tenure with the Texans, there was no shortage of racial insensitivity and dysfunction within the organization. In 2018, McNair, the Texans' owner, criticized black players for kneeling during the national anthem, going as far as saying that he can't have inmates running the prison, which enraged Texans players. After Bill O'Brien was fired, Watson was assured by Cal McNair that he would be involved in the Texans' head coach and general manager searches, which didn't happen. In fact, when the Texans' general manager search had seemingly concluded with 2 finalists, Omar Khan and Louis Riddick, 2 qualified black men, Following the recommendation of an independent search firm, McNair abruptly changed his mind and made the decision to hire his friend Nick Caserio, the longtime director of player personnel for the Patriots. This was a slap in the face to Watson, along with many people in the Houston Texans organization who were reportedly furious with McNair's rash decision to hire Caserio, a man whose name wasn't even mentioned by the search firm. By this point, Watson felt extremely disrespected and vowed to never play another down in a Texans uniform. At the time, the Texans were the laughingstock of the NFL. The public believed the McNair family was a bunch of racists, and their star black quarterback was attempting to force his way out, a massive business and public relations catastrophe. Yet, as soon as the accusations against Watson surfaced, the growing hatred of the Texans organization that was threatening the McNair's bottom line completely disappeared. Tony Busby, the prosecutor of this case, happens to live 90 yards away from the McNairs, which you might think doesn't mean anything necessarily. But if you dig a little deeper, it appears more than just a mere coincidence. What's interesting is that none of the lawsuits against Watson allege any sort of violence, and only 2 of his 24 accusers allege any physical contact at all, contrary to public belief. Even if you wanted to believe the lawsuits in their entirety, Watson was, at the most, aggressive about paying masseuses for sex. Busby is an extremely wealthy famous lawyer with a net worth of over $700 million. The idea that an established lawyer like himself, who regularly wins cases worth in the hundreds of millions of dollars, is pursuing he said, she said cases that don't allege physical violence of any kind, that are reasonably worth 4 figures each if a jury believed the allegations entirely, is very doubtful. This theory was seemingly revoked when Busby named the Texans as defendants alongside Watson, claiming the Texans facilitated Watson's conduct and stated the firm's intention to make sure all involved in Watson's conduct are held accountable. Yet, according to a 2,000-word independent review conducted by a civil litigation law firm, this is not the case. The article explains that, due to the nature of these allegations, there's no way the plaintiffs could prove the Texans caused them any damage on top of whatever damage they could prove that Watson caused them. And if Watson isn't found to have caused damage to the plaintiffs, the Texans couldn't be found liable for assisting him in causing such damage. The review concludes Busby's decision to include the Texans as an all too convenient and transparent cover-up, as the Texans lack any real exposure in these suits. Simply put, adding the Texans as defendants was just for show. This entire proposition does rest on the idea that Cal McNair purposefully orchestrated this attack with the help of his neighbor, who just so happens to be a prominent Houston lawyer, to divert attention from the controversy surrounding himself and his organization. Purposefully running a smear campaign against your disgruntled franchise quarterback is ridiculous, but as we've seen from Cal McNair, making rash, uncalculated decisions is not out of the question.
Deshaun, I think as details have come out, some people have wondered why you've used the number of massage therapists that you've used. Can you kind of explain that number?
Yeah, I can't get too far into detail because there's an ongoing investigation still. But I can say that with this now day and age, especially with my age group, social media is a big business part that goes into it.
Regardless of how suspicious the timing of these lawsuits are, currently, there is no reasonable answer as to why Watson used so many massage therapists. At minimum, Watson received massages from at least 40 different women over a time span of a few years, many of whom were not even licensed massage therapists, which is odd, to say the least. Whether he did the things he is accused of having done, some of his actions are still bizarre. In one case, Watson even drove half an hour to one of his accuser's mother's house for a massage, despite never having met the woman. He would also regularly take non-disclosure agreements, or also known as NDAs, given to him by the Texans' director of security after a woman threatened to expose his alleged behavior. Various NFL players have also questioned Watson's high number of massage therapists. A retired NFL linebacker said he never heard of anyone ever using 40 different people, claiming that a 15-year veteran that got massages weekly didn't see half of the therapist Deshaun did. Jermon Bushrod, a 12-year veteran who retired in 2019, said he himself only had half of that number throughout his entire career. A current NFC defensive back also said the same thing, reiterating that he doesn't know guys who use 22 different masseuses. The moment when Watson didn't have a rational explanation as to why he used at least 40 random massage therapists when he had access to the resources of a professional football team was the moment he lost the court of public opinion, even if he was criminally cleared of wrongdoing. And it has only gotten worse. On June 3rd of this year, Rusty Hardin, the attorney defending Watson, made an appearance on a Houston radio show, and this is what he had to say.
I don't know how many men are out there now that have had a massage that perhaps occasionally there was a happy ending. I do want to point out, if it has happened, it's not a crime. Doing something or saying something or being a way that makes you uncomfortable is not a crime.
Watson's own lawyer, seemingly trying to point out that being aggressive and persistent is not illegal, only strengthened the claims that Watson coerced his victims into doing things they did not want to do. Hardin later walked back on his statement, saying that he was using the term hypothetically and not describing Watson's case, but there was no putting that toothpaste back in the tube. Hardin alluding to Watson making women feel uncomfortable during massage sessions, whether Watson did or did not, was a colossal mistake that single-handedly lost him the court of public opinion and likely was the driving force in Watson being forced to settle with his accusers in an effort to salvage what remains of his reputation. On June 21st, Tony Busby announced that 20 of the 24 women accusing Deshaun Watson of misconduct agreed to settle for an undisclosed amount of money, while the remaining 4 plaintiffs will continue with their civil lawsuits. Watson is mostly done with the courts, however, he could face a potential suspension from the NFL. Yet, regardless of what happens with a potential suspension, which may have already occurred depending on when this video is being watched, Watson has conceded his control over what's remaining of his reputation. In the eyes of the public, unless significant evidence comes out, either affirming his innocence or proving the accusations made against him true, an unremovable stain will continue to exist on both his and the Browns' legacies. And fittingly, only the Cleveland Browns, a franchise that has been locked in the NFL's basement for the better part of 2 decades, can acquire an elite franchise quarterback, all the whilst alienating a significant part of its own fan base. Since Watson has already settled the majority of his civil cases, we will likely never know whether he is the most disturbed predator in NFL history, or a victim of the greatest smear campaign and extortion attempt ever made against a professional athlete.